This movie is just a sample from our System Center Configuration Manager current branch training on itdvds.com. In this sample, we're just going to go through the actual installer of installing System Center Configuration Manager current branch, but there's so much more to it, like deploying a PKI infrastructure, creating your certificate templates and your certificates, installing all the different prerequisites, going through the different deployment scenarios, configuring SQL Server, and a lot more. And we go through all that on itdvds.com, as well as how to administer and use System Center Configuration Manager current branch. So if you want to learn more, please go to itdvds.com. Now let's begin the sample. Now let's install System Center Configuration Manager current branch. So I've downloaded my setup files here to my C drive. Just downloaded them from the internet, unzipped them. Let's go to SMS Setup, bin, x64, and we're looking for setup.exe. So I'll just double click on that, click yes, and it lets us know what we need to do before we actually run this, and we've done all that. So let's go ahead and click next. For Install Configuration Manager primary site, we could use a typical installation. It's going to install a Configuration Manager primary site, use the default installation path, configure local SQL Server, enable local management point for Configuration Manager, enable local distribution point for Configuration Manager. We're actually going to go through those separately because we're using a remote SQL Server. Now we could also install a Configuration Manager central administration site or recover a site. So we're just doing a primary site. I'm going to use the evaluation edition. If we had a license key, we would specify it in the software assurance expiration date. I'll go ahead and click next, accept the various terms, and click next. And we can download some updated setup files, so I'll just make a little folder for that. Call it downloads SCCM. And I'll just copy that path and paste it into my setup. If I previously downloaded the files, I could specify where they were downloaded to. And it's going to go ahead and download those updated setup files. And while that's running, I do want to say that before we actually run this installation, it's always a good idea to run Windows Update. Make sure the server is completely up to date that we're installing System Center Configuration Manager on. Now we can select the server languages that Configuration Manager displays in the Configuration Manager console and reports. So if we need some different languages, we can go ahead and check those. I'm just going to leave English. Now we can select the client languages for Configuration Manager to support. So if we have some other clients that are using some other languages, we'd want to go ahead and select those. I'm just going to leave English and click next. Now we're going to specify a site code. This is a 3-digit. It can use letters or numbers, no special characters. Something like PHX for Phoenix. And the site name cannot be changed after the installation. So it's important that we add whatever we want to add and possibly make it generic enough that if the company name changes or something like that, then it's still going to work. So I'm going to call this one PHX and Phoenix headquarters. Now one thing that it actually does not mention is that the site code is used in folder names, so you cannot use AUX, CON, NUL, PRN, and SMS. So anything other than that should work fine. Specify our installation folder and install the Configuration Management Console. I'll go ahead and click next. Now if we already had a central administration site, we'd specify the fully qualified domain name of it here. We're installing the primary site as a standalone site, so I'll select that and click next. Lets me know you have selected to install this site as a standalone primary site. You can expand this site into a hierarchy, basically with a central administration site at a later time. So that's good to know. Now we're going to specify our SQL Server name. Mine is db01.itdvscorp.com. We want to use the fully qualified domain name. That's the default instance of SQL Server on this SQL Server. If we're using an instance, we want to specify the instance name here. And we can specify the database name. I'm just going to use the default. I'll go ahead and click next. Now we're going to specify the path to the SQL Server data file, so where we want to put it, and also the path to the SQL Server transaction log file. So let's go over to our SQL Server real quick, db01, and on my E drive I've got a databases folder that I want to use for the database files. So we'll go back here and paste that in, and go back to our SQL Server. On our T drive I've got a transaction logs folder for the transaction logs, and paste that in and go ahead and click Next. The SMS provider are used by the Configuration Manager console to communicate with the site database. Where's that going to be? That's going to be on this server, sccm01.itdbscorp.com. And here we have the option to configure all site system roles to accept only HTTPS communication from clients, or we can configure the communication method on each site system role and check the box clients will use HTTPS when they have a valid PKI certificate and HTTPS enabled site roles are available. So I'll go ahead and set up that option, click Next. And where do we want our management point to be? That provides clients with policy and content location information. It also receives configuration data from clients. Yeah, both of these are going to be on SCCM01, and we want to use HTTPS. And same goes with our distribution point, which contains source files for clients to download and lets you control the content distribution by bandwidth throttling and scheduling controls. So for that, we'll do HTTPS also. And if we're putting these roles on separate servers, lets us know the site server's computer account, so the site server is where we'll run this installer at, is used to install the selected site system roles. So that computer account would have to be an administrator on these other computers, again, if we're installing these roles on different computers. So I'll go ahead and click Next. Lets me know HTTPS communication will require a valid PKI certificate for the site roles and client to function correctly. We've actually set that up and at least got the certificates ready to go. And I'll go ahead and click Next. So the next step is going to be setting up a service connection point. And a service connection point does a couple of things, but it also helps keep your configuration manager up to date. So now with the current branch set up, there's all sorts of builds that are coming out, keeping up with new updates to Windows 10 and things like that. Well, we update configuration manager in a similar way through an update as opposed to a huge service pack. And normally we're going to want to go ahead and create the service point. We can always skip this for now and set it up later if we want to. I'm going to go ahead and set it up during the setup process here. I'm going to set it up on SCCM01. So go ahead and click Next. And we get a little summary. So everything looks good. I'll go ahead and click Next. It's going to go ahead and go through the prerequisite check that we actually ran earlier. So everything should check out here just fine. Okay, the prerequisite check completed. I got that same warning about SQL Server security mode. I've just got SQL Server authentication enabled on my SQL Server, and it kind of just wants Windows authentication, but that's fine with me. Everything looks good. Click on Begin Install. And this installation process can take a long time. And the setup has completed. You can see it took an hour and 23 minutes, so quite some time. Normally in a production environment it wouldn't take quite that long, but there are a lot of steps involved in the setup process. If there are any issues, we can click on View Log to view the log, but if everything looks good, System Center Configuration Manager has been installed.